I'm Ron Allen, professor of preaching and Gospels and Letters. I've been on the faculty of Christian Theological Seminary since 1982. In many circles, the last 27 books of the Bible are referred to as the New Testament. Once in a while, you hear them referred to as the Greek Testament or the Second Testament. I prefer the term Gospels and Letters for this reason. These other ways of speaking, especially New Testament, in our linguistic context, in which the new is valued and preferred and the old is wearing out and no longer as desirable as it once was, in our linguistic context, the expression New Testament has always the possibility of suggesting a denigration or a distance from the old. I like the expression Gospels and Letters because the Jewish community has a way of speaking about the first 39 books that allows Gospels and Letters to take a natural place in the sequence. They speak of the Torah, prophets, and writings, to which the church, for its sacred canon, simply adds Gospels and Letters without a demarcation between these two bodies of literature. It's the same God with the same ends, just working with different audiences. I have 3 projects in which I'm involved right now and a couple of others that are on the burner. I'm working on a commentary on the book of Revelation for preaching that will tentatively be titled, Lo, I Tell You the Mystery, subtitle, A Commentary for Preaching on the Book of Revelation. I'm also a part of an editorial team which is working on a book that will be entitled The Living Pulpit 2018, sermons from the 3 streams of the Stone Campbell movement, the a cappella Churches of Christ, the Christian Churches, Churches of Christ, and the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. And I'm also on the editorial team for a group of some 30 scholars who are putting together a collection of essays around themes of prophetic preaching as in relationship to pastoral preaching. It's actually a collection of essays in honor of one of our colleagues who teaches at Vanderbilt University. I have on the road for future development a theology of preaching from the standpoint of process theology. I want to do a book on models of the church from the world, well, models of Israel and the church from the world of the Bible that seem instructive to me for preaching in models that are similar to or different from today. I mean, there are more than a dozen different ways of conceiving of the nature of the religious community and its purpose in the world of the Bible. And some of these are very similar to situations in which churches find themselves today. And it's suggestive to look at how the biblical writers sought to theologize in those situations. And there are also models that are quite different and that really don't apply in a one-to-one way to today. If a student is considering the possibility of theological education generally, I think a student needs to have a deep sense of wanting to engage Christian tradition with an eye toward its implications for today, almost in and of itself as an inquiry, because the vocational, the money-earning possibilities that were once plentiful as recently as my generation are not plentiful in the same way today. You need to want to have this so that it can become a part of your own sense of life, identity, and vocation, regardless of how you make your money. it may well be that a person will end up in a traditional congregation, in an emerging congregation, in an agency for social justice or personal care or something sponsored by the church, or engaged in a transforming vocation in a setting outside of ecclesial circles. But it may be that a person will find himself or herself in what we call a tent maker ministry, that is, working part-time I hate this language, working part-time in a secular job in order to support church-related, vocation-related, transformative work. Or it may be that a person may find another line of work altogether out of which to express the deep vocation that one encounters here. I think CTS is working really hard right now to make our education, our educational experience, a setting in which people can encounter materials, people, and possibilities to serve this spectrum of needs. For those who are particularly interested in ecclesially related vocations or vocations related to social transformation, whether or not related to the church, I think our curriculum is at a high water mark with respect to its emphasis on practice. More than any other theological seminary curriculum I know, the notion of learning through, from, and to practice is at the center of the way we do things. And I need to say here that practice is not just a technology of learning how to do this or that, how to prepare a sermon, how to put together a budget, how to organize a public demonstration. Now, these are all a part of the mix, but in contemporary language, practice is developing an identity out of which these things come. And then in the act of doing them, you follow the act of doing them by reflecting on them and how they might influence your understanding of why you do them. There's a kind of reflective circle at work, and you can get into the circle at any point. It's a circle that involves learning, reflection, practice, learning, reflection, practice. And depending on the subject matter, depending on the student, depending on the context, depending on the professor, you might get into a certain subject matter at any one of these points on the circle, but it will always take you all the way around the circle. So at its very best, you're learning while doing, and you're doing while learning, and doing is learning, and learning is doing. The Christian Church Disciples of Christ seems to me the ideal religious movement for the early 21st century in these regards. We have a core of important theological convictions, and yet they are not expressed in such a way that is wooden or enchaining. They are expressed in such a way as to invite conversation, to invite boundaries between the appropriate and the inappropriate that can be under negotiation. I think this centeredness in a conversational context is just right for our time, and depending upon one's theological method, the degree of openness can be greater or lesser, but there is always a certain openness. I think our distinctive approach to immersion, that is, to initiating persons into the Christian faith through immersion, is a dramatic symbol. Tillichian terms, the meaning participates in the symbol helps create the meaning, is a dramatic symbol, especially when we live in a world that is so fractious and broken. It's just a powerful symbol of the transition toward a life of transformation. Receiving the Lord's Supper every Sunday is, for me, a life-sustaining experience. I don't mean to be anti-ecumenical or offensive in any way when I say this, but my personal experience is that coming together in worship without the chalice and the cup is like taking a shower without turning the water on. I think the dynamism in community that we have at our best overflows into a sense of mission, both locally and beyond. And one of our historic emphases has been on the relatedness and the mutual respect that ought to exist among all Christian communities. Goodness knows there's enough fractiousness within the Christian community today for this aspect of our witness still to be vital. But when you think about the brokenness of the human community beyond, and the idea present in both the Torah, prophets, and the writings, and the Gospels and letters, that the people of God are to be a light to the nations, that is, one way of helping other nations realize how we can live together in mutual support. When you think about the church having that vocation in a fractious world, I would like to think that one of the greatest gifts we could give to the world is the capacity, a model for living together in true mutual respect, solidarity for the good of the whole human family.